This is your City Council Roundup, a recap of what's happening at City Hall with John Ongaro. The views expressed in this program are solely of those of the host and not necessarily those of the radio station or its partners.
So last night, another City Council meeting in the books, and it was an important one as the city budget was approved last night. And today, thought it would be timely to bring a guest on to talk about it. Councillor from McKellar Ward, Brian Hamilton. Good morning to you, fine sir.
Hey, good morning, John.
Thanks for taking the time to do this. I know it's a busy morning, but you and I have been chatting quite a bit over the last number of weeks, especially about this budget process. This budget process, Brian, has been one of the quietest ones that I remember. There wasn't a ton of debate. There wasn't a ton of back and forth. There wasn't even that much discussion. You said something very important at the last meeting that kind of got my attention, and I wanted you to kind of explain that and touch on that. One of the things that you said at a meeting last week, or it may have been the last meeting on Wednesday night, was that this increase and the fact that this council decided that 5.5% was going to be the max and the limit, and that you had to do the work to get to that, is really nothing to celebrate. And you said it best last night, we got it done, but that 5.5% is still a bit of an issue, and it is a lot for a lot of people, isn't it?
Well, for sure. And another thing, and another goal of actually doing a budget is to set a tone for future budgets, right? So that's why, I was really vocal about where I was, and even though that we signed this budget all together and it becomes council's budget, some debate. I think we could have been a little bit more robust in some of our debate, and it's no secret that future budgets are going to be just as tough. So,
well, part of the recap from administration last week or the previous week was that we're staring at 4.5% at least for the next number of years in order to get caught up. You had some trouble. When I say you, I mean this council. This council had some trouble this year with the cuts that administration brought back. And you were also very vocal about this, and so was I, because one of the things that always has troubled me is that we pay administration to be experts at things and to do what they're told. And I often say that I could recite Norm Gale's speech almost every week that says, we do this under the direction of council. You asked for this. When $2.1 million worth of cuts came back to you back in June, this council only took $900,000 of that. And so there is some pushback to some of these cuts, and it seems like that's always going to be a bit of resistance, even though this council asked for it. Well,
and the thing is, if not these cuts, what's next? And,
right.
I do a lot of digging, kind of like when we're not in meetings, and I know that what's coming next is not going to be palatable, and I think there's some kind of general thoughts that growth is going to kind of see us out of this. But growth is barely going to even touch our infrastructure gap. We know that, we have to fix up our assets. You talk about it almost every day on your show. So, growth isn't going to be some magical panacea. We are going to need to look at potential service reductions. And these aren't just like out of nowhere. These are basically service levels that they have across Ontario and have had for a long time. So we are carrying a service portfolio that we've had since probably the 1980s. Very few reductions have been made. So I think the onus is on us to have these tough conversations.
Why is it so tough for this council? And I hate to say this because I've been called out for it many times by other councillors. There seems to be a divide. There is an awful lot of close votes on a lot of things, and there was an awful lot of close votes on making some of these decisions. Why do you think that is? Why are all 13 of you not rowing the boat the same direction when it comes to these cuts?
Well, it's funny. I kind of remember you saying almost the exact same thing maybe on the last term of council. And the fact is these are we have a kind of a divided community on how to move forward. And I think council kind of, represents the community really well.
Mm-hmm.
But cuts aren't the only way. It's only one tool that we have. But ultimately, we need growth. We need all kinds of stuff. But I'm a big advocate for infrastructure spending, of course, and I think that we have to, also make a shift to new operating dollars. We know that there's operating pressures coming. Like, for example, just on the crime, homelessness, there was a motion by Councillor Folds that asked admin to explore upstream investments in community building and programs for youth. So those are going to be coming, and those are going to be in-year expenses that we have to plan for.
We heard a lot last night and in previous meetings about some of the money that's going to be spent in the next a year or so. Another highlight for me was a couple of weeks ago, and your excitement in council chambers for finally seeing Victoriaville getting passed and the demolition underway. You were giddy that you actually watched that vote happen, that it's finally happening. It's $10.7 million as of right now. It starts in the fall. That was budgeted for. There are other big ticket items in front of you right now, Brian, that I have absolutely no idea how you're going to pay for them. And so when looking ahead, and you mentioned the infrastructure gap, which is $20 or $30 million right now, when looking ahead, there are some shiny things on the horizon that we're going to have to pay for, one of them being the indoor turf facility that wasn't in this budget, that there are reserve funds for, that there's cash set aside for. So, pointed question, is this the time, is this the year to be pulling the trigger on that project? Can we afford it?
Well, and then that's the thing. Unless there's any kind of like really creative financing plan, I think we really have to be mindful of what's on the horizon, because some of the things on the horizon we don't have a choice on. The potential police station.
That's right.
And that's only one big one that has high profile. In the budget, actually, this year, we're going to be designing the East End Bridge, for example. Look at the Edward Street Bridge. That came in at $2 million. It ended up costing us $6 million, and it just came out of nowhere. So it's not what's on the horizon even that we're expecting. It's the costs are volatile across all sectors, construction. So, I'm always talking about, resilience and consolidating. And I think that's, fiscally, that's the way forward that I see. That's the only way forward I see.
I've often compared this to a house budget, right? There's things that you want and there's things that you need, but eventually you're going to run out of a pot of money. There's a lot of people that say and push back, and I get the emails almost every week about, never mind the expenses, John, we have reserves for that. What are your thoughts on that? We have a pile of money in reserves. Is that what it's for? To you, is it for these shiny things that maybe represent a small part of the community, or are they for the bigger ticket things like the police station that you have to pay for?
Well, our reserves are actually important, because if we carry debt, we actually have to have reserves to kind of back them up.
Right.
And we have to, and that's how we maintain our credit rating. But as for shiny new things, nobody would argue that the indoor turf facility is not needed. I've always argued that I thought the scope was a little bit too broad. But honestly, let's be honest, a turf facility that could have kids playing all year round is the goal. I'm there. It's just how we get there that we differ as a council. So, of course, I'm just looking at creative ways to find financing or find partners. And I think in this particular way, I think we're going down a little bit of a rough, bumpy road.
And you're not alone with that thinking. Councillor Benz has been pretty outspoken about that too, and other councillors as well. What's your gut tell you? Is when March comes around and it comes in front of you again, right now there's the city is running a survey and a discussion on the website, getting feedback from the community. What's your gut telling you about when that comes back in front of you in March?
Well, I mean, I spoke to this at council. I think we're going to get, maybe some trepidation from councillors. There is going to be a lot of community pushback, just as there's people pushing forward. But, again, I think we've kind of gone a little bit down the wrong road. We should have started, in my mind, with a more of a grassroots kind of feasibility approach, and some people would argue that we've already done that. We've done their due diligence, but, nobody is also paying attention in a holistic way to the finance side. And like you say, and you speak about it a lot, is all of the other infrastructure needs and how can we balance those needs?
Well, and those infrastructure needs are for the entire community. It's, yes, there's a great number of soccer players and kids that need this facility, but we're talking about bridges and roads and buildings that everybody needs. And so that's where I get troubled by that balance and where that money comes from.
Well, and some of the stuff is people would never even think about.
Right.
We have one item, the McKellar Bridge, that actually is the fuel station for the entire northwestern region of Ontario for gasoline and diesel. So little things like that, I think, are important. The Northwest Arterial, which is a prerequisite to upgrades to the Thunder Bay Expressway, is on that list. You know, these are big ticket items. They're visionary, you know, but you got to be able to think of the long game. But indeed, I don't know. I also agree on the social side. You got to get kids playing. So to that end, I think, you know, you got to look at scope potentially. And
nobody is denying that. You're absolutely right. This seems to me like this might be a difficult year ahead of us. We've now approved 5.47% in tax increase. We're staring at another 4.5%, maybe more next year. In this coming year of council, what are your biggest fears about the things that are in front of you? What is keeping you up at night about things that are coming?
Well, to be honest, and I think our city manager has talked about this, is our ability to staff. If you look at one of the biggest issues we're having right now is reliable transit.
Yeah,
and that is an issue, and that's true across all business sectors, but it's especially true at the city. So, I mean, that's what keeps me up, is our ability to retain and recruit new staff. But you know, I think that's actually top of mind. But you know what, Thunder Bay is going to look a lot different in a couple of years. We're going to have 2 rejuvenated downtowns. We're getting 24 cruise ships this summer. You know, there's a lot happening that people are going to recognize, and it's going to be evident the investments we're making.
I think it's important to point that out too, and I try my best to do that. There are a lot of good things happening, and there are a lot of great changes happening, and we need to look at those things sometimes instead of the doom and gloom. So you're absolutely right.
Well, for even on the housing file, I mean, we're positioned very well through some of the work that our staff and the community has done, and through the chamber, that we're positioned well to potentially get a whole bunch of money to build new houses and make Thunder Bay housing more affordable for residents. So that's also a big file that we're working on, and hopefully we get some good news here in the next couple of weeks and months.
I appreciate this time, Brian, because, you know, we've had our fair share of fun, and you and I have talked about it. You've come an awful long way here in your second term. You and I am not gushing when I say this. You have become the voice of reason around that table, and you absolutely do your homework every single week. And I just want to thank you for that service and for your commitment, because you've come an awful long way, and it's fascinating to watch how this has changed over the last couple of terms, and what's changed in that room as far as the amount of information that you're bringing back and the questions that you're asking. And I want to thank you for doing that.
Well, thanks. Well, I mean, that's really kind, but and really want to, you know, celebrate you too. I don't even know if your listeners know you're an artist and an avid photographer, and you're out there killing it in your own way. So, you know, congratulations on all your success too.
Well, we have something in common. Both of us love this community, and we'll do our best to take care of it.
You got that right.
Councillor Hamilton, thank you for this time. I appreciate it. I know you're busy. It's going to be an interesting week ahead, or a couple months ahead, and we'll be sure to talk again.
Okay, sounds good, John. Talk soon.
All the best, Brian.